All right. Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us for our Entrepreneur Speaker Series. I am Shanika Turner. I am an assistant professor of business administration here at Georgia Highlands, and I am the moderator for this series. In spring 2021, we will launch an associate's degree in entrepreneurship. With this degree, students will learn the basics of entrepreneurship, small business ventures, and business plan development. Students will also develop knowledge, skills, and values from direct experiences outside of a traditional academic setting through experiential learning. So this speaker series, along with the Charter Innovation Challenge, which is very similar to the television series Shark Tank, are just some examples of the experiential learning that students will experience. So we have quite a big audience today. So in order to make sure we stay on schedule, I have muted everyone, but please feel free to type in your questions in the chat box. And after our speaker is done speaking, I will ask those questions to the speaker. So at any time, if you have a question, please just type it into the chat box. Today, I am very honored to introduce our guest speaker, Pat Manna. Pat holds a bachelor's degree in marketing from Fordham University in New York City and an MBA from New York University's Stern School of Business. After graduating from NYU, Pat served as an Air Force officer, working on the B-1 production contract on site in Rockwell International in Los Angeles. Upon separation from active duty, he continued in the Air Force Reserve, rising to the rank of captain. Pat began his marketing career in New York City with the Colgate-Palmolive Company in the household products division, working on major Colgate brands. Pat then joined Gillette, Keon, and Ecker Advertising and Nabisco, all in consumer marketing positions, working on national and international brands. In 1984, Pat left the corporate arena and began his entrepreneur career. He has initiated and has been involved with at least 3 startup companies, and with one culminating in an initial public offering. Pat also founded the Citadel's Shark Tank business plan competition called the Bulldog Business Bowl. We are very excited to have Pat with us today. So Pat, I'm going to go ahead and give you the virtual floor.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Shanika, thank you very much for that lovely introduction. And first and foremost, I'm very honored and pleased to be speaking with you all today. You're the best and brightest, and you're going to be the future leaders of our country. So it's great for me to be talking to you about my experiences as what I like to refer to myself as a serial entrepreneur. What I'm going to talk to you about today is more about you than it is about me. I'm going to recount my experiences and try to relate them to your journey, and to say that entrepreneurship is not for only business people anymore. The word entrepreneur comes from the French, meaning undertaking or risk taker. No mention of business or money is mentioned. So what I'd like to do is to talk about my background, how I was entrepreneurial, in many cases, which had nothing to do with starting a for-profit business, and then segue into what we did as entrepreneurs, especially focusing on the things that make entrepreneurs entrepreneurs. And I'm sure that most of you already have the entrepreneurial spirit, and you really might not even be aware of it. So, having said that, let me give you a little bit about my background so you can understand basically who I was, where I came from, and what got me started on my journey. I'm a lot older than most of you. I got my degree, as Shanika said, from Fordham in 1969, and I went directly to NYU for my MBA. When people asked me what an MBA was, I got my MBA in 71. But before that, I have to tell you that I'm a poor boy. My folks were Italian immigrants, both coming from Italy, Naples specifically, and their dreams were to start a new life in this country. They arrived in New York, had no money, so that's where they settled. Okay. And I was their first child. I was born in 1948, so you can do some quick numbers. I'm 71, but I'm told I think like I'm 22. And I was an inner city kid. We lived in a multi-family house, and New York in the 50s and 60s was a melting pot. So most of my friends were from all backgrounds and nationalities. We had Italians, we had Jews, we had African Americans, we had Asians, we had Germans. We were from all backgrounds. And we had one thing in common. Our dreams were going to be our ticket to advancement. Our dreams were our ticket out. And that's really where I started to learn entrepreneurship. And one of the most important things, excuse me, in being an entrepreneur is people. I'm going to mention it several times during our little session today. People make the difference. Technology helps, innovation certainly helps, but it's all about people. Hold that thought because we're going to get back to it when we talk about the IPO. So I was an inner city kid. We didn't have much money. We had to be innovative because we couldn't go to summer camp. Our folks didn't have the money. We basically went to public schools, and we had to be very innovative in the way we entertained ourselves and the way we basically learned from each other. And the names of the kids were like Manna, Okioni, Fraternangelo, Eisenstock, Williams. We came from all backgrounds. And that diversification in our backgrounds was a lesson that I learned right away that would basically make not only my corporate life, but the entrepreneurial and life very, very important. People, like I said, made the difference. So my dreams were my ticket out. I basically learned what my passions were. And I encourage everyone listening to be introspective and understand what makes you happy and what your passions are. Because if you follow your passions and try to figure out how you can make a living following your passions in any field of endeavor, you'll never work a day in your life. You'll go and have fun with the people around you, your friends. Okay, your associates become your friends, your clients become your friends, and that was very important. So I as Shanika said, I applied to Fordham University and I was rejected. They told me that I didn't qualify for whatever reason. And that was my first entrepreneurial play. I wasn't going to accept that. So I took the letter. I found out who the dean was because he didn't sign the letter. Some person from registrar signed the letter or admissions. And I basically didn't ask for an appointment. I went up and I waited outside the dean's office at lunch. And I saw his picture in the yearbook. I got a Fordham yearbook. And I said to him, "Sir, can I have a few minutes of your time?" And he said, "Sure. Who are you?" And I told him, I said, "I was someone that you just rejected." And he kind of chuckled. And I said, "I'd like to talk to you about that." And as I go back in my life, that was probably my first entrepreneurial, as I say, initiative or play. And basically, I convinced him that they were making a mistake. I negotiated a probation, okay? And always remember something, you don't get what you deserve in life, you get what you negotiate, okay? So my first negotiated deal was to get into Fordham on a probation, 6 months, and to make a very long story short, I graduated almost at the top of my class, who's who in American colleges and universities, and a host of other things. I also became an Air Force officer. I was Air Force ROTC commissioned, pilot qualified, and I thought I was going to pilot training. But then I asked for an educational leave from active duty, applied to NYU. It wasn't the prestigious School of Business then, it was the Stern School of Business. It was the NYU GBA, Graduate Business Administration. I was accepted and I did my MBA full-time 2 years, and I got my MBA in 1971 when people asked me what's an MBA. The only people that were getting MBAs back then were the academics. Business guys weren't really going for MBAs. They were going right into the workforce. So I got my MBA expecting to go to pilot training, and the Air Force, who always said the needs of the service come first, said, you got an MBA, you're a New York guy, we're gonna put you on government contract negotiation. So as Shanika said so well, I left the Bronx to go to the Rockwell Corporation working on the B-1, the first time around for the B-1 in Los Angeles, California. So I went from the Bronx to LA. What a culture exchange that was. And I worked on the B-1 with some very, very interesting people. It was a hot contract for the government at the time. Everybody was involved in the B-1 from the DOD and from the Air Force. And I had some great mentors. That's probably the first point that I want to make in terms of being an entrepreneur. Whether you're an academic or a teacher or an engineer, remember, entrepreneurship is not just for business anymore. It's a mindset. You know, I am an entrepreneur every day. I look for opportunity. So on the B-1, remember, the government is very, very structured. It's process driven. And I was a kind of a gunslinger from New York with this very interesting background. And I was always not trying to think out of the box, but smashing the box, okay? And I can remember my boss, who was an Air Force colonel, who had just come back from Vietnam, saying to me, Pat, you can't do that. And I remember me saying, I remember a second lieutenant talking to a colonel, right? Saying, sir, do you want to get the mission accomplished, or do you just want to follow the rules? And he said, I'd like a little bit of both. And I chuckled, and I said, let me see what I can do. So we were negotiating the contract, and the process back then was to negotiate contracts by line items, okay? And the supply chain folk probably can really relate to this. You negotiated every piece and part of the aircraft. There were thousands. And you made sure that every piece and part came in according to specification, and budget. I said, as long as the whole contract on the aircraft comes in on budget, who cares about the pieces and the parts? Maybe we lose a little here and make a little there. But that's not what the regulations said, okay? But to do it by component part, first of all, it's tedious. Second of all, we'd still be negotiating the contract. So I always prefer to ask for forgiveness than permission, another sign of an entrepreneur. So I basically said, what the heck? Let me try to get the negotiated cost to where it is, and then we'll worry about, and I'll ask for forgiveness about the individual break in the process regulations then. Well, to make a very long story short, the ends do justify the means, okay? But I did basically get scolded. But when I went out to dinner with my boss, Colonel Hoig, who is passed on, he said to me, Patty, the way you got away with this is that you achieved the objective and you're only a second lieutenant, but you're a command second lieutenant. He said, and you're great. You showed a lot of us, you know, not the error ways, but sometimes you have to do thinking out of the box. So the point of that little vignette is that even in structured environments like the government, you can be entrepreneurial. It's a mindset. And before I forget, because we're involved in higher education and we're involved in the collegiate atmosphere, one of the biggest entrepreneurial pivots, remember what a pivot is. A pivot is a change in direction without a change in vision, okay? We'll talk about that in a minute. But education, because of the pandemic, made a very, very entrepreneurial play, and that was adjusting and refocusing from face-to-face education to online, remote, and virtual delivery of the learning process. That was a very, very interesting and innovative and sometimes hard to digest entrepreneurial play. Okay. And a lot of educators, my sister and brother-in-law are educators, they don't think of that. They just said, hey, we had to do what we had to do. An entrepreneur sees that as a very innovative play because instruction has been given, you know, ad infinitum by face-to-face. Couldn't do that with the pandemic. So the entrepreneurial talents of the educators came to play, even if they didn't realize it was an entrepreneurial behavior change. Okay, so I'm trying to say that entrepreneurship is a mindset. I was entrepreneurial in the Department of Defense in the Air Force, process driven, very, very regulation oriented. And you can be entrepreneurial sometimes with taking a little bit of a hit, but in that environment as well. So I served for 5 years on active duty. I got out. I became a captain in, again, in procurement and in contract negotiation. I stayed in the Air Force in the reserve for another 10 years. And basically, like it happens a lot when you're in the reserves, my civilian career got in the way. Something had to go, and the military went. But I pride myself on serving my country for a total of about 14 years. Only made captain, but I could never get everything done because I had to focus on my business. I left this service, or I separated from the service, as it said, and I followed my dream to be a Madison Avenue consumer packaged goods person. And back then, this is the 70s. Back then, if you wanted to market on a national stage, you went to one of 3 corporations for consumer packaged goods marketing: Colgate-Palmolive, New York, okay, Procter & Gamble, Cincinnati, or Lever House, Lever Brothers, also in New York. I researched, more entrepreneurial spirit came out. I researched that the director of personnel, the human resources personnel, was a Fordham graduate. So I contacted him, remember, just like I went and stood at the dean's office at Fordham when I was initially turned down. But this time I made an appointment, went in to see him, and basically talked to him about possible position in brand management. Had an MBA, had a military background. Remember, this is post-Vietnam, okay? So that was an unpopular war, so I had to talk about my experiences, in the service, not in Vietnam, but at Rockwell, and my reserve component. And unbeknownst to me, he was an Army reservist. So you never know who you're talking to, okay? And that brings up networking, but we'll talk about that in a minute also. But when I said before, follow your passion, one of my passions, and introspectively, one of my strengths, was communicating with people. And maybe you kind of can get that now. I'd rather be in front of you face to face, but I like to talk to people, and they tell me I'm not only a good communicator, but a very good listener. And always remember something: in business and entrepreneurship in life, and many times it's not what people say, it's what they don't say. It's all of those nonverbals, all of those pregnant pauses that you have to learn to interpret, okay? And some of the business schools are now implementing courses on nonverbal communication. So basically, I got hired by Colgate-Palmolive. Back then, it was a white shoe company, meaning very preppy. They hired people of all nationalities, but from the preppy Ivy League schools. And here I am from NYU. And as I said, NYU back in the 70s is not the Stern School of Business it is today. Still a good school, but not that prestigious. And I got hired by what we used to call a white shoe school. White shoe meaning from the preppy white shoes, the white bucks, remember, the saddle shoes, that very preppy way of dressing. They call that a white shoe firm. White shoes in consumer packaged goods, white shoe firms in the law, white shoe firms in investment banking, but people from all backgrounds worked there. Joe Perkins, who was my mentor from Syracuse University, was an African-American from Brooklyn, and Joe and I still communicate. Joe's a great guy. Andy Edelman, a Jewish guy, was running another brand at the household products division. So we had Africans-Americans, we had Italian Americans, we had Jews, we had Irish, and Colgate was very big on that diversification, which in the 70s was innovative, okay? Because people from various cultures, you basically teach each other, and you come with different perspectives, okay? And again, we were first generation young people, okay? And Maddie Ferenz, can't leave the ladies out. Maddie Ferenz actually was our boss. She was a group product manager when we were product managers. Maddie was Hispanic. So Colgate had it, and I think by design, a whole group of people. And I was placed on a brand that maybe some of you know, it's called Palmolive Liquid, okay? The hand detergent. And I ran that brand. That brand back then was a $100 million brand with a promotional budget of about $40 million, which was big business at that time. And we were very innovative in what we did with Palmolive Liquid. There was a spokeswoman by the TV name was Madge, and she was extolling the virtues of the brand. Being a product manager at a major consumer packaged goods company back then in the 70s and early 80s, okay, was like being the president of your company. The product manager was the officer of primary responsibility for that brand, meaning P&L, marketing, advertising, research, engineering, costs, everything. You were the guy. And I don't know if a lot of you know it or any of you know it, but the product management system came to us from Procter & Gamble, okay, where they instituted the product management system where the product manager is like the president. Before that, marketing was done by committee. And you know what you get when you do things by committee, you get things that horses turn into camels, and camels look like other things. But when you have one person with one vision, with buy-in from his team, then you basically are on focus. And I never forgot that, okay? People, okay? Vision, focus, and follow your passion. And that at Colgate really provided everything for me. People made the difference. Diversification was key, okay? Communication. And by the way, as part of our product manager experience, we were all sent out in the field to sell, okay? We had MBAs and we were in the field for 6 months to a year selling. My territory was Paterson, New Jersey, and unfortunately I got mugged, but that's another story for another time. So I was sharpening my skills, and as an entrepreneur, and I always knew that I didn't want to be a corporate guy, and I'll tell you in a minute why, but I knew that the corporate structure would give me an idea of how marketing and communicating is done on a global basis. From Colgate, I went to Gillette. I was a new product VP there, and I had an agency stint, meaning advertising. Back then, you did the client side and the agency side, so you did the consumer company side and then the advertising agency side. And then my last position in corporate America was to be vice president of new product development for Standard Brands, later to become the Bisco brands, and I was the head of the Planters division. Mr. Peanut, cans and jars, dry roast, oil roast, that all came under me and my teams, okay? And I was very entrepreneurial there. Don't know if anybody remembers it, but we transitioned the dry roasted peanuts. We marketed that around the holiday season in decanters. We increased consumer consumption during peak periods, and I applied a lot of the non-traditional marketing plays to a brand that was getting a little stodgy. We owned the category, meaning we were number one in the category. We were kind of resting on our laurels, and I invigorated the brands. Okay, so that was my corporate life. Brings me up to about 1984, 85. Now remember the 80s, go 80s. The market's skyrocketing, okay? It's the era of $20 cigars. It's the era of, overextension. Everybody's making money, right? And guess what happened to me at Nabisco? My entrepreneurial side got me in trouble. I worked for a guy, Ross Johnson. If any of you like to read, look up Barbarians at the Gate, okay? It talks about RJR and Nabisco, RJ Reynolds and Nabisco, headed up by a real gunslinger by the name of Ross Johnson. And I worked for Ross running the Planters business. And one day he called me into his office and I thought I was getting promoted. And he said to me, Pat, you're doing a great job, but you're doing a great job for the brand. You're not doing a great job for my career. You're gone. And I couldn't believe it. I thought it was a joke, okay? But apparently for whatever reason, he didn't think that I was part of the culture. And always remember something, Peter Drucker always said that culture will eat strategy for lunch. every day. So in my entrepreneurial way, as a change agent, I was seen as somebody who was doing great for the business, but didn't fit into the organization, especially Johnson's career, and I was unceremoniously gone, okay? And I racked my brains for months after that, thinking of anything else that it could have been. Wasn't. I was just caught in the trap, and I was gone. Gone with a house, a mortgage, a wife, and a son on the way. The son now is 42 years old. And I said to myself, I will never find myself in this position again, okay? My New York drive-in style is great, but sometimes corporations don't understand it. How many times has that happened to you folks, where you're doing everything right and all of a sudden the road ends, okay? And there is a lesson there that a lot of entrepreneurs have to learn. You got to learn how to fail well, okay? Because every time you fail, there's a lesson in it. You just have to dissect and understand what that lesson is. So learn how to fail well, whether it's in business or whether it's in academia or whether it's in nonprofit work or whether it's in raising children or being in your family. Learn how to learn from your mistakes. Very key, because essentially we teach ourselves, okay? All the wonders that we seek are within ourselves. We just got to learn how to draw them out and learn from them and leverage on them. So I'm out of a job. The world was ending, so I thought, and I leveraged on my network. Some people say to me, I never met a stranger. I love to talk to people. I talk to everybody, to the chagrin of my wife, but I talk to everybody. And I tell her, if I ever got laryngitis, we would starve, okay? So when I was looking, I kind of leveraged on my connections. And always remember, connections, networking is very, very key. That is a trait that most entrepreneurs have. That last gentleman who spoke a couple of weeks ago, Carl, the professional tailor in that very interesting world of TV and what have you, he mentioned it. He mentioned, it's funny how most entrepreneurs have a common thread. He mentioned that he leveraged on his friends and his connections, and he had the gift of talking to a lot of people. You could see it. And I started to leverage on my connections, and I said, hey, I'm out of work, okay? And a lot of people are embarrassed to say I'm out of work. I'm out of work, okay? Nothing that I did. I was told I didn't fit. My business is doing well. I'm on the street. And I had a lot of opportunity. But again, I didn't want to go back and work for a corporation. Corporations do what's good for corporations. They don't necessarily do what's good for the individual, okay? And I said to myself, hey, let me talk with my bank. Let me talk with my wife. Let me see if I could leverage on the things that I've learned and basically start a business for myself. And that was the first very, very risky. Remember, entrepreneur means risk taker, means to undertake things. I didn't want to say undertaker, thinking that it was a mortuary, but a person that accepts challenge and accepts the upside and downside for his actions. Very key. Sound familiar? That's a life lesson as well, right? So there are a lot of parallels between entrepreneurship, not only for business and for risk taking, but with life. Very important, okay? And I knew what my strength was, talking to people, okay? Team building, leveraging on diversification, leveraging on people's skills, okay? And I formed a team that had like mind to mine, okay? That we were entrepreneurial, we were risk takers, we didn't like to work out of the box, we liked to dismantle the box. They say, think out of the box, forget the box, kill it. There's no box, you make the box, okay? And the skill set was diverse. So I gathered around me people that were good in finance, accounting, okay? Investment banking, R&D, selling, me, marketing, someone else. And we basically started our first entrepreneurial play, and that was a company called Act Media. Remember, we were consumer packaged goods people, so we were very attuned to what happened at the store level, and we saw all the pluses and all the minuses. Okay, so what's one of the first rules of being an entrepreneur is fill a void. Okay, doesn't have to necessarily be for profit, but fill a void. What's the problem? Okay, don't fall in love with your great idea. Fall in love with the market void, because your great idea may have no place. It's a great idea for you. Okay, but in business, fortunately or unfortunately, it's only a good idea if it solves a problem. And we saw a problem. We saw there was a lot of confusion in in-store media. Consumer would go in, they had one thing when they went into a store, a grocery store, and that's how fast can they put the items in the shopping cart and get out. So basically, we had an idea, I had an idea of incentivizing the consumer right at the point of sale, or the point of purchase at the shelf, whereby if she saw a product, there was a dispenser that emitted a coupon right at the shelf. Do you remember that? Maybe some of you have seen it. So if you go to the shelf and you see Palmolive liquid, there was a little device that you pressed the button and ejected a coupon right on that. So when you went to the register, okay, you could redeem, and it was basically a cents off on the coupon, on the product. Okay, that company was called Act Media, ACTMEDIA. Okay, and the play there was the relationship that I had with the trade channel, with the grocery trade channel, which I developed at Colgate, Gillette, and Nabisco. Okay, so again, I'm leveraging on my connections, which I developed, just like you should be leveraging on the connections that you develop. Okay, we didn't take that. I didn't take that to IPO. Okay, but that gave me an idea. We did pretty well with that. I sold that company, and they tried an IPO with Act Media, but it didn't work. But that gave me a toe in the water, a peek under the tent on building a company, going to bed at night and wondering how you're going to make payroll. Remember? All those things that you don't talk about in polite conversation. Everybody talks about the successes, but the other side of that, remember, learning how to learn from your mistakes and learning how to accept upside and downside risk, learning how to basically wonder how you're going to make payroll, wonder how you're going to meet the order. The good news is that we got an order. The bad news is that we got an order. Now we got to fulfill it, right? And learning how to multitask, learning how to call audibles. Business is never straight line. Business fluctuates every day. There are all kinds of issues that impact on what I call the factors of production. And you basically have to learn how to call audibles, roll with the punches, react, and overcome adversity. Okay? That's why airplanes take off into the wind, by the way, because they need a resistance to build up the flow under the wings. Same thing in business. You got to learn how to multitask and think way outside the box, and how to leverage on the skills of your team. Very, very important. Okay? And you have to learn how to surround yourself with people that don't have necessarily the same skills you do, but have the same vision that you do. Okay? And you leverage on everyone's skills. So, went from there to something that really scared Wall Street to death. It's funny how things work out. That remember that this is the mid 80s to the late 80s, when technology in the grocery trade channel, in grocery stores or anywhere, was just taking hold. Technology. And myself and George Off, a guy by the name of George Off, myself and my brother, we all were from consumer packaged goods backgrounds, and we all basically were at a trade show. At that time, I was basically at Act Media. My brother was at Clorox. George was kind of initiating. He was a Procter guy, and he was initiating some idea that we'll talk about in a second. And we're on a sailboat that was going from Long Beach, California to Catalina Island. And My brother Tom was drinking a Coors beer. And remember, you couldn't get Coors beer back then east of the Mississippi. It was only west of the Mississippi distributed. And he turned to me and he said, look at that barcode, okay? He said, isn't that cool that now via the scanner in store, and that was new back then, via the scanner, they don't have to punch in or hit the register. It just gets scanned and, you know, it basically records the purchase on the at the register. And I said, yeah, well, that's really cool. And we were talking about the misredemption of coupons back then, where product managers like us, VPs, would incentivize the trade with case-off allowances, and we would incentivize the consumers with coupons to drive the consumer to the store to get a price reduction on the product. The problem there is that the grocery stores didn't feature price. They put the money in the pocket. The consumer would go to the store and they wouldn't see the reduction, and they would walk out, and we as brand marketers would lose basically a customer, a consumer. And when you approach the trade with that, they would say, hey, you know, sue me. I own the brick and mortar. You want your stuff in my store. That's the price of doing business. And reluctantly, we said, yeah, okay, right? So when we were talking about the barcode, and you can probably put it together now, we saw a vehicle whereby the reduction could be taken right at the point of sale. Okay. Shanika, can you hear me? Because something funny went on with my computer.
We can hear you, but we just can't see you.
You can't see me. Hold on for a second. Can you see me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Thank you. So we saw it as a way that we would eliminate the misredemption of couponing. And that was very entrepreneurial, only if we could make it work. Okay. So we had that idea on the sailboat. Okay. And we did something the next day that 99% of people with good ideas to fill a market void don't do. We acted on it. Okay. We acted on it. We had an idea. We saw it being a play to not give the trade money. Okay. We saw it as a play for total incentive for the consumer right there at the point of purchase. And you're seeing it now. And we basically took it. We wanted to get some feedback. We didn't want to do a lean startup or a business plan. So we leveraged on some of our connection in the grocery trade channel, and we got appointments with people to bounce our idea off of them. And one such appointment changed our lives. I had a friend who was the VP of purchasing at a retailer on the West Coast called Vons, V-O-N-S. And we went in with a white paper and we pitched the concept, okay? And he said, I don't like your concept, I love it, but not for what you're thinking. I don't care about couponing. What you've just done is give us a way in real time to look into the shopping basket, to see what the consumer is purchasing by stock keeping unit every day. And that can go to just-in-time delivery. The supply chain folks understand that. The financial people understand it, okay? Everybody understands just-in-time delivery, and we eliminated basically their warehousing structure, and we basically revolutionized the way the grocery trade channel works, okay? And we didn't even realize it, because they wanted to give us a 20-store test, and we walked in with an idea on a white paper. Then we had to go back and do all the things that we had to do basically to make a 20-store test happen. And that's where the entrepreneurial play really comes in. We had to get the technocrats to work with us. We had to get the logisticians to work with us. We had to set a 10-store test up at Bonds with this system. We called it the Catalina Network. Why Catalina? Because we were on the way to Catalina Island, right? Most people thought we were bathing suits, but it's another story for another time. And we did something that a lot of people don't think of. We went for a provisional patent, and we patented it so that somebody like from Proctor would come in and steal it. We got a patent on the technology. You can't idea patent, but you can patent the technology, and that basically kept away all of the interlopers. Okay. And here's where I want to get into the instincts of entrepreneur. I'm making it sound very easy. It's not. We had to leverage on everybody's basically background. We paid each other in phantom money, stock. We evaluated our stock at 10 cents a share. We formed a company, we mortgaged our houses, and we do all the things entrepreneurs do when they're committed. Okay. We had meetings with our wives, our girlfriends. Okay. We said, this is what's going to happen. We got buy-in from everybody. Okay. And we adapted a mindset of a vision that was consistent, and we saw this through. We had the passion to basically make this work because we were buying into the why we were doing it. People buy why you do things. People really don't buy how you do things. They don't care. And they really don't care what you do. They care about why you do it and how fast it solves their need. Okay? And they basically, our immediate client back then was the grocery retailer, right? And it was solving a real need that they have, and that was the data collection so they could see what the consumer was purchasing. The byproduct of that was the consumer play, right? And I remember my brother saying to me when we're flying back from the West Coast, he was saying, they don't get it, because he was locked into falling in love with the what? The idea, not the problem. And I said to him, I don't care what they get. I'm tired of being broke. Okay, we're going to sell them what they want. We pivoted. If we didn't pivot at that point, we would have lost the play. We would have lost the idea. So we pivoted. We kept our vision. We focused on the why, and we became partners with, at that point, Vons. Okay, and we stayed in. We paid each other with stock. I remember we put $50,000 on my dad's American Express card. Okay, never forget it. He's looking at me right now from the big house. We paid him back in a lot of dividends, and we basically formed this company. We were single-minded, focused on the venture. Fast forward, we tested with Vons for 6 months. They rolled us out in 1,500 stores in a year. Okay. Then we went and we did a dual play on the sale. We sold to the retailers and we sold to the brand marketers. Okay. So let's say a category manager at Pepsi could lock up the whole soft drink. Okay. And the only coupons that they would get, the consumer would get, would be on the Pepsi product or price reduction. The retailers didn't care because it drove the consumer to the store and they can see purchase patterns. Okay. So the retailers had an objective and we had an objective with the brand marketers. So it was a dual play with the retailer, play with the consumer. Funny thing happened. Word got around. Initial public offering, most people call it going public. I'm not going to take it for granted that everybody knows the intricacies of an IPO, nor am I going to sit here and talk about the nuances of the IPO. Okay, that's not the purpose of this. You can get that. You can Google that. The purpose of what I'm trying to convey basically is the instinct that we went through. We focused on basically I call it the 7 Ps. Okay, and this is what got us to the IPO. Okay, people, investment bankers buy management teams. People. Remember when I said we'll talk about people? People. Diversification. You walk into General Motors in Detroit, you think you see cars? You don't. You see pictures of people, all types of people, all colors of people, all nationalities of people, okay? Because people make the difference, okay? People blend off of each other, leverage off of each other, okay? And we had a tremendous management team. People, persuasion. In order to do an IPO, you have to convince the investment bankers, okay? That's where I came in, all right? Our investment banker was DLJ, Donaldson, Lufkin, and Jarrett, and Goldman Sachs. We had 2, but primarily DLJ took us public on the New York Exchange, okay? People, passion, perseverance. It's not easy. People say to me, was it hard? I'm 5'6". I used to be 6'5". Okay, it's a joke. You got to have that passion that failure is not an option. And when you do make a mistake, you learn from the mistake. Okay? Perseverance. Okay? Perspiration. Right? Got to know when to pivot. Got to know when to say it's not working this way. Let's try it that way. Remember with Tom and, hey, they're not getting it. I don't care if they get it. They want to buy that. That's what we're going to sell them. Okay? And then last but not least, should have been first, prayer. Okay? Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. All things will be given to you. Okay? There are no atheists in foxholes. Okay? At the end of the day, we came together and we realized that we couldn't do this alone. Okay? And we prayed. We had meetings on Monday night. We called them Monday night wrecking crew meetings, where whether you had 100 shares of stock that we invented, right, 10 cents a share, or 100,000 shares of stock, we came in, okay, and everybody was the same. There was no positioning. There was no yes, sir, yes, ma'am, watching what you said. Everybody's opinion counted. And we basically got it all out on the table. DLJ took us public, New York Exchange, and to make a long story short, our stock opened at 16 and it closed that day at 65. Okay? Excuse me, stock opened at 20. They wouldn't take anything less than $20 a share. Okay? We capped it at 980,000 shares, and there were people in our organization that were like administrative assistants that had 50,000 shares. So you do the math, okay? But the common bond is that we all had the same vision, okay? Combined with different skill sets, okay? We basically did what is usually referred to basically in entrepreneurial, financial entrepreneurial activities is the IPO, a successful IPO, and basically we did it. We stayed with the company 5 years. Once Wall Street gets involved, they're not entrepreneurs, they just move money around, and we left after 5 years. I found another passion, and that was giving back to young people just like you, and teaching and leveraging on connections, as Shanika said so well, the experiential component. So that's it. We got 10 minutes left. Shanika, you got some questions? I mean, I tend to talk too long, so I hope somebody has questions.
Thank you so much, Pat. That was great. That was amazing. We do have some questions that were sent to me in my chat, and so I'm going to head and ask you. Someone wanted to know, is there a way to gather more entrepreneur skills or vision?
Yeah, that's a good question. Figure out what your passion is, okay? And then hang out with people that have a similar passion, all right? And how, okay, Pat, that's great. How do I do that? Let me be a little, not stupid, but oblique here. I love to fly airplanes, okay? I found that was my passion at a very young age. I hung around at airports, private airports. I was the kid on the Coke machine that would exchange washing airplanes for flying lessons, okay? So when you become introspective and I understand what your passion is, what your life is, what your dream is, then go find people that have the like mind, okay? The famous bank robber, Dillinger. Why do you rob banks? Well, that's where the money is. Okay, they weren't asking him what makes you rob banks. Well, he was so focused that I'm a bank robber. That's where the money is. Okay, I rob banks. I want to be a teacher. I want to be an electrical engineer. I want to be a bricklayer. Hang around with those people. Learn from them. Okay. I hope that answers your question. And that goes to networking. And that goes to talking to people. And that's why we're trying to bring in the experiential component to the school where you blend the theory with the practitioner, and then you really get it. And that's all part of that. And the next question, please.
Sure. Next question was, how do you deal with the fear of taking risk?
Hey, that's what it's all about.
And she said specifically financial risk.
Of course, because sooner or later, we hate to say it, but it's all about money, right? That's where the rubber meets the road. Okay, that's why there are not more entrepreneurs. Okay, because, and remember, I was not a rich kid. I was a poor kid. Okay, but you got to get to the point where you have the passion and the feeling that you want to do this so bad that you can overcome anything. Let me give you a practical solution. When I got fired at Nabisco, I was already a month late on my mortgage. The first call I made after my wife was my banker. Okay, my banker. Okay, remember, bankers are really not your friends. They're all about minimizing risk, and they don't want to be surprised. So that banker who I went to later became one of our investors on the Catalina play. Okay, so that's a very difficult question. And I answer it is that you got to come to the point in your head where failure is not an option and you're basically going to do it. Remember, we borrowed 50 grand off of my dad's American Express card. He didn't even know he had that much money. But that's where the entrepreneurial instinct kicks in. Okay, we came to the point where we're sick and tired of corporate America. They do what's right for them, not us. And we're going to do whatever we have to do to make this work. And failure is not an option. And we basically accepted the fact, remember, entrepreneurship, be responsible for top and bottom, that we're going to sleep on the floor. My wife went to work, okay? Justin, our first, didn't go to, to the fanciest schools, So we made the adjustments, but we got it all basically on the back end. And there's something that I'm forgetting that I got to tell you. You got to give back. It's a big circle, okay? I make all I can so I can give it all away. I came in broke, I'm going out broke, okay? I'm being a little stupid, but you know what I mean. Entrepreneurs, people of honor do that, okay? Especially people that came in with nothing, okay? And always remember, it's not where you end, it's where you end from where you started, okay? So that's the thing. You got to be willing to take the shot. And sometimes taking that shot, that risk, is very difficult. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it, okay? So I wish I had a better answer, but for me, it was, I'm not gonna get screwed, forgive me, by corporate America ever again. If I'm gonna get screwed, I'm gonna screw myself, okay? And I hope that's okay to say, but
yeah, that was great. Okay, so last question we have for today is, what piece of advice would you give to college graduates who want to become entrepreneurs?
What kind of graduates?
College graduates.
Oh, who want to become, okay, great question. Hang around with people like me, okay? And I'm willing to take, Shanika knows how to get me, okay? I'm on the staff at Georgia Highlands, I work with Dean Mel Largin and Dean Alan Nichols. And remember, one of the reasons I'm here is because of Alan, okay? Alan, he saw the need for, entrepreneurship. And that's why Shanika is doing such a great job. But associate with people that share your passion and your mindset, okay? Get into that environment, okay? Get into that environment and put yourself in the near occasion of opportunity. Again, the near occasion of opportunity. Why do you rob banks? That's where the money is. Why do I hang out with people like Dean Largin or Alan Nichols? I want to be an educator. I want to be a dean. Let me learn from them, okay? Why do you hang around with Dr. Don Green? He's the president of this school, okay? I want to be the president of the school someday. Learn. There are places that you can go. Entrepreneurs in Atlanta, you have all kinds of startup, opportunities to listen and learn. There's an organization called SCORE, Service Corps of Retired Executives or Entrepreneurs. You got an outreach from a company that's very entrepreneurial right there in Atlanta. Small company, you probably heard of it, Chick-fil-A. Okay, and we're going to have a lecturer or an example next time from an owner-operator. Right? You put yourself in the near occasion of opportunity. If you love to ride horses, go hang out at a stable. If you like to fly airplanes, you want to learn, hang out at at an airport. Right? So put yourself in that near occasion of opportunity. Talk to people. That's where the network comes in. Get it? And all else, call me. I'll put you in the right direction. I know everybody. Go figure.
Awesome.
Go figure. One more question. Got a few minutes.
We have, okay, want to take one more question? If you had the chance to start your career over again, what would you do differently?
Nothing. I'm asked that all the time. Nothing. God's been good to me. He showed me how to identify the passion that I had. Okay, he showed me how to follow that passion. You never want to put your square peg into somebody else's round hole. Okay, so he showed me, he directed my way and put me on a good path, and he gave me the tenacity to, when I fell off the horse, I got back on. Okay, and the only thing that I probably would have done a little bit sooner is starting to give back. Okay, I probably would have gotten involved in giving back higher education a lot sooner. But I thought that I had to be totally accomplished by then. You can start giving back right now, you folks. Okay, you're entrepreneurs. A lot of you are blending working full-time and going to school. That's multitasking. That's very entrepreneurial. Okay? That's a lot better than the guy who's going to an elite school that getting a check from mom and dad, and all they have to do is breathe. Okay, you folks, and I can relate because I was one of you folks. I took the bus to school. The reason I went to Fordham University is because the public transportation bus, okay, not the Greyhound, stopped in front of my house and let me off at Fordham. Okay, I day hopped. I commuted. So follow that passion.
Okay, that's great. We have one more question. What is the best way to advertise a new company?
Depends on the company. Good question. Depends on. I'm chuckling because they're great questions. Depends on the company. Depends on the trade channel. Okay. We have something now that we didn't have back in the 70s and 80s. That's the internet. Sometimes the internet is a great way, but not the only way. Okay, with Catalina, we went to trade shows. The IPO got started basically because DLJ came to us. We didn't solicit them. Okay, because the word got out. Okay, like I said before, we scared Wall Street to death. We didn't know how good we were. So depends on your business. Sometimes it's the internet, sometimes it's social media, sometimes it's being involved. Remember, near occasion of opportunity, trade shows, associate with people that are in similar businesses. Okay, and sometimes the biggest entrepreneurial play is figuring out how you best advertise your company. Okay, so that really depends on the nature and the value proposition. We didn't get too academic, but the value proposition, the need that your idea, your product or service is fulfilling. Remember, don't fall in love with your idea. Fall in love with the problem, because the consumer is going to tell you whether your idea is good enough. And by the way, never ask your friends about your idea. They'll always tell you it's great. They're afraid to hurt your feelings. Okay, so the short answer to that question is depends on the trade channel, the concept, the product, and when all else fails, go to your network. Go to your what I call it, the kitchen cabinet, your mentor. You have to get mentors, people that'll take an interest in you, like Colonel Hoyt did at Rockwell. He said, you got great New York driving style, but you got to be able to deliver the the result without really smashing everything. Because if you alienate people, remember, culture will eat strategy for lunch every day. And no plan ever withstands the first attack. The old military. You can have a great strategy, a great plan. As soon as you engage the enemy, most of it goes out the window. And associate yourself with people that are like-minded. Martin Luther King, he said, I have a dream. He didn't say, I have a plan. Dream big. He said, I have a dream. And 250,000 people showed up that August day at the Washington Monument. They came not to see him. They came to validate their dream with a man who can articulate it. I have a dream, not I have a plan. Brilliant. Brilliant.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you all for attending. This was an amazing session. This was recorded, so we will be sending out a link so you can watch this again, and also a survey. We'll be sending out a survey, so we'll really appreciate if you would complete that for us. The next speaker that we have, he will be presenting on November 18th. So if you could register at ess.highlands.edu. And we will see you guys in November. So everyone, thank you for coming and have a great day.
Thank you.